To the faculty, administration, all the distinguished guests gathered here, thank you so much. Really, I feel so honored to be sharing this joyous occasion with you today. And I'd like to also thank Jim Allen, one of my very favorite teachers at Yorktown High School in Arlington, Virginia, and a member, as we heard, of Randolph-Macon's class of 1957, for extending the invitation and refusing to take no for an answer. And to all of the parents here today, well done. Your child is graduating from college. Nice work. I know the feeling. As you just heard, my daughter Ellie just graduated a few weeks ago, and I spent the morning of her big day listening to Paul Anka singing "The Times of Your Life" on my iPhone and crying. It was pretty pathetic. So I have a little sense, parents, of what you're feeling today. Watching Ellie get her diploma made me feel so proud, so excited, and so old. And of course, I have saved the best for last. Congratulations to the class of 2013. I'm very happy to be here in Ashland, Virginia, or as you people call it, the center of the universe. But I want to tell you, it was a little dicey getting here today. I took a wrong turn, and somehow I ended up at Hampton, Sydney. Can you imagine? Thank God I eventually found my way here, because I needed, A, a little girl power, and B, I did not bring my wide whale cords with the little ducks on them or my topsiders. So, someone said you would like it if I dissed Hampton, Sydney, no? Meanwhile, you know, I can see why you all love it here. I've eaten my way through Ashland already. I came just in time for fried chicken Fridays at Estes. I washed it down with a jumbo margarita at El Az. I tried to convince them it was my 21st birthday, but they did not believe me. I also wanted to soak in a little local color, so I tried to go for a swim in the fountain last night, but it was unfortunately too sudsy. So instead, I went looking for the ghost of Alice at Mary Branch. I found her, and she and I played a little cornhole with Mama from Andy's. Alice and Mama, by the way, both said to tell y'all hey. Anyway, for those of you just waking up from the senior gala, it is Saturday, June 1st, your graduation day. But seriously, being chosen to deliver a commencement speech is an awesome honor and responsibility. The goal, of course, is to be entertaining, somewhat brief, and impart some hopefully useful information as you leave this chapter of your life behind and set off to conquer the world. So with a few past speeches under my belt, this time I decided to take a slightly different approach. I wanted to make sure I was telling you all not what I thought you should hear, but I wanted to let you tell me what you wanted to hear. So with that in mind, I asked you for your questions, and by the way, you all sent in some great ones. This is so 2013, isn't it? I got in touch with my inner hipster, and I have crowdsourced this speech. What could be more perfect for our social media generation? So let's get started. Victoria Harrison, where are you, Victoria? Hi, right there. Victoria asked, is it normal for us to feel nervous leaving college and stepping into adulthood? Oh, Victoria. Of course it's normal to feel nervous, but I'll take nervous and raise you one. How about terrified? Let's face it, you all are entering a world that doesn't seem to be exactly waiting with open arms. We're still feeling the aftershocks of the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. People may not be knocking down your doors with job offers, and the competition is fiercer than ever. But times are not only tough for college grads. In terms of global competitiveness, our country is in need of a big old can of whoop-ass. The World Economic Forum now ranks the U.S. 7th in terms of labor, economy, and innovation, and it's the 4th year in a row we've been downgraded. Another study found among industrialized nations, we rank 25th in math, 17th in science, and 14th in reading. Yikes. How many times have you heard that your generation is not going to do as well as your parents? Honestly, it's enough to make you spend all day in your underwear watching YouTube videos of skateboarding cats. So yes, it is completely normal, Victoria, to be nervous. In fact, it would be abnormal not to be. But instead of trying to make those feelings go away, as we often do, and we need in our we need to be happy all the time culture, embrace it and know that you will never feel more alive than when you're just a little bit scared. You'll be testing yourself, stretching yourself, and leaving this beautiful, intimate campus and a routine I'm sure you've gotten pretty used to over the last 4 years. You're getting out of your comfort zone, and that can, unfortunately, be, well, uncomfortable. But you're not going to just go through it. You're going to grow through it. So keep your eyes wide open, because in so many ways, your education is just beginning. Meanwhile, Connor Moe asks, Connor, where are you? Hi, Connor. How you doing? What is your take on the unique challenges our generation will face after college? Having one generation, Connor, trash the other that comes after it is as American as apple pie. I'm sure your parents, or at least your grandparents, remember Paul Lynde and Bye Bye Birdie singing this little ditty. Kids, I don't know what's wrong with these kids today. Kids who can understand anything they say. Why don't they act like we did, perfect in every way? What's the matter with kids today? Okay, I'm not gonna quit my day job, don't worry. But there has been so much written about your generation that I could fill shelves with books and articles about millennials alone. Managing millennials, millennials rising, millennial momentum, and that's just from the M section of Amazon. I used to be one of those slightly judgmental, holier-than-thou baby boomers sniffing my contempt along with so many in my generation. You're pampered, you're entitled, your parents have done too much for you, you're pathetically incompetent, you're narcissists. Because you grew up thinking everyone gets a trophy, you don't understand the value of hard work, sacrifice, or delayed gratification. You have self-esteem, all right, but it's self-esteem without portfolio, self-esteem on steroids. And technology has made you both self-centered and craving for approval from people you don't even know, with likes on Instagram, friends on Facebook, and followers on Twitter. Well, guess what, millennials? On behalf of all of you, as well as my own 21-year-old daughter, I'd like to say, shut your pie hole, people. To all of you sitting here today, don't let anyone, and I mean anyone, define who you are. Sweeping generalizations are unfair and misguided, and when they're about entire generations, they are often just plain wrong. Think of yourselves as a painting by the great pointillist George Seurat. From a distance, you may appear to be a single image, but if you look more closely, you'll see that image, in fact, is made up of an infinite number of tiny dabs of paint. Each one of you is unique, and you are the only ones who can define who you are or what you will become. Which brings me to my next question. Oh gosh, Caitlin, I hope I don't butcher your last name. Caitlin Dimitrison, is that right, Caitlin? Where are you, Caitlin? Hi, Caitlin, did I say it right? Close, thank you. Thank you, Caitlin. Caitlin asks, how do you think our generation is uniquely equipped to rise to the challenge? Well, I'm sure many of you here have heard the phrase, the greatest generation, coined by my former colleague, Tom Brokaw. It describes the generation of Americans who grew up during the Depression and World War II. Well, a recent Time magazine article by Joel Stein asked if you all graduating today might actually be the next greatest generation. Joel wrote, the generation that experienced Monica Lewinsky's dress, 9/11, the longest wars in U.S. history, the Great Recession, and an Arab Spring that looks at best like a late winter, is nevertheless optimistic about its own personal chances of success. And you should be, for a few reasons. First, one of the disses about millennials is also one of your greatest gifts. You're all wired 24/7. You've never known a world that wasn't filled with laptops, smartphones, and the internet. And because of that, you already have something we need to move this nation through the 21st century. The knowledge that we really are all connected. And there is a great big world out there for you to explore online and perhaps more importantly off. You respect diversity and are far more tolerant than your parents' or your grandparents' generation. You are also more philanthropic and service-oriented. 75% of you donated to a cause you believe in last year or helped raise money for that cause. That is awesome. You march to your own drummers, and that makes for good leaders. You question the status quo, and you should. That's because a business model for the poster child of your generation, Mark Zuckerberg, embraces change and has proven it helps us all move forward. Who didn't get annoyed when suddenly Facebook forced you to make a timeline instead of just a regular old wall? Frustrating? Sure, but never boring, always fresh, and always keeping us coming back. It's called life hacking, which is defined as thinking out of the box to improve productivity and get better results. You are all life hackers by nature and by nurture. And that keeps all of you looking for better ways of doing things, and all of us optimistic that you will create, navigate, and innovate a future we could only imagine in our dreams. And your sheer numbers alone, 82 million of you, bigger than any other demographic. That means you're bound to boost the economy as you move out, buy houses, and get jobs. Well, unless you can't find work and move back in with your parents. But hey, as long as it's not forever, it's okay. I did it too. But that brings me to your next question, Ethan Litvin. Hi, Ethan. Hi. Ethan wants to know, how were you able to land your dream job after graduation, and what steps did you take to get there? Well, Ethan, I don't know if anyone really lands their dream job right after graduation. You'll likely be the low man or woman on the totem pole, and it will be just the beginning of a long and probably winding career path. Unlike the days when you worked at one company and retired with a gold watch and a pension, many of you will have worked an average of 7 jobs by the time you're 26 years old. But as the saying goes, you have to start somewhere. And let me pause for a minute to say something about finding your passion. Yes, it is critically important to do something you love, because if you love it, you'll be good at it. But don't spend the next few years navel-gazing, searching endlessly for your true calling. Even if it's not the perfect job, get in there and do something. You never know who you might meet, what it might lead to, and if you'll discover a related field for which you're better suited. In other words, don't let this period of finding yourself find you at 30 in your parents' basement playing Xbox. So, how do you get your foot in the door for that first job? Well, take a lesson from the Cowardly Lion, courage, or you might call it chutzpah if you're from New York. My late father, who was such an inspiration to me and one of my personal heroes, called it moxie. Whatever you call it, it's the ability to leap before you look, to know you may be better sorry than safe, to go for it with no guarantees. So Ethan, this is how I landed my job in television. It was 1979. That was the year of the Rod Stewart song, Do You Think I'm Sexy, and Gloria Gaynor's disco anthem, I Will Survive. I think my personal soundtrack is more the latter than the former. I knew I wanted a job in television news, and after suffering one rejection after another, I decided I was going to be proactive. I donned my best Dress for Success outfit, which back then basically meant you look like a flight attendant. My mother gave me a ride in our cream-colored Buick station wagon from our house in Arlington to the ABC News Bureau in Washington, D.C. And when I got there, I asked an imposing security guard if I could see Kevin Delaney, the deputy bureau chief. After he stopped laughing, I asked him if I could make a phone call from the lobby. I called Davey Newman, who was then the executive producer of World News Tonight. Here's how the conversation went. Hi, Davey. You don't know me, but your twin brothers, Steve and Eddie, went to high school with my sister Kiki, and I live down the street from your cousin Julie. Could I come up and just say a quick hi? Cut to me in the ABC newsroom being personally delivered to Kevin Delaney's door. Better yet, cut to me with my first job in television. I made coffee, I made Xeroxes. I also made friends I still know today. On my first day, Sam Donaldson, then the White House correspondent, leapt onto my desk and started singing at the top of his lungs, Katie. A little embarrassing, yet somehow strangely exciting. Imagine if I had never had the moxie to call Davey Newman. But moxie alone does not a great career make. It also requires persistence. I speak from experience here, so Meredith Eccles, thank you for providing me with a perfect segue with the following question. Why do you think it's important to not give up when you're ambitiously developing a career? Well, first of all, if you give up, you lose. Game over, and you'll never know what might have been if you stayed in the game. Here's a true story. About a year into my first job, I decided to leave ABC and head to a fledgling startup called CNN, or as my snobby network news colleagues called it, Chicken Noodle News. There I would work as a producer and get my first crack at reporting, at the White House no less, because that's the perfect beat for someone with absolutely no experience. I stayed up all night practicing in front of my mirror, speaking slowly and deliberately into my hairbrush. It was very Jan Brady. My assignment was to preview the president's schedule that day. But during the commercial break, before I was about to go on, my knees knocking, my mouth dry, I could hear the two anchors, and they were talking about me. "Who is that girl?" one of them asked. "I don't know," said the other, "but she looks like she's about 16 years old." The president afterwards of CNN called the assignment desk and said he never wanted me on the air again. Needless to say, I was devastated, and TGHD, thank God for Haagen-Dazs. My boss at CNN, though, in retrospect, wasn't being cruel. He was absolutely right. I stunk. Rejection can be humbling, but it can also be a huge motivator, especially for competitive people like me. So I didn't let that experience kill my dream, or as I often say, I didn't let the turkeys get me down. I went on to work in local news in Miami and Washington, D.C., and lo and behold, the more I did it, the better I got. My big break came when my dear friend and mentor, the late Tim Russert, told me I had spunk. Unlike Lou Grant, he likes spunk. Google that, kids, and you'll understand what I'm talking about. So he offered me a job as the deputy Pentagon correspondent for NBC. By 1991, I was co-anchor of the Today Show, where I spent, as you heard, 15 fantastic years. I covered triumphs at the Olympics, tragedies here at home like Columbine, the bombing in Oklahoma City, and 9/11, which I believe was one of the most important assignments of my career. And there was endless variety. Where else could you interview Yasser Arafat, Howard Stern, and Miss Piggy in the same week? It was such a privilege, but after one too many 5 a.m. wake-up calls, I was ready for a new adventure. The opportunity to become the first solo female anchor of a network evening newscast was hard to turn down. After all, when I started in TV news, there were still plenty of guys who wanted to keep the broads out of broadcasting. Back then, in fact, harass was 2 words, not 1. I always have to pause for a minute when I tell that joke, because it usually takes people a second. The chance to show that a woman on her own could handle the job with intelligence and competence seemed worth the risk. But one of the problems with being a trailblazer is sometimes you get burned. And those valuable lessons I learned early on about not giving up were still going to be necessary. In the first few months at CBS, TV critics wrote about my clothes, my hair, my makeup, even the way I held my hands. Some said I lacked gravitas, which I have decided is in fact Latin for testicles. It was a rocky start, but I remember a note from a former colleague who had written to me as I was leaving NBC, which said, "Boats are always safe in the harbor, but that's not what boats are built for." I was determined to ride out the storm. I focused on the news and not the noise, and it got better. 5 years later, it was time to take another chance, another risk. Last September, as we heard, I launched a daytime talk show with the highly original name of Katie. Now I think I'm going to have to change that to Dr. Katie. Take that, Dr. Phil. I feel that my whole career and the wide range of experiences I've been fortunate enough to have prepared me well for this new role. Yes, I can arm wrestle Jenny McCarthy, but I can also host an hour on adoption, sexual assault in the military, autism. That is what all those years at the Today Show and the evening news trained me to do. And just think if I had let a bad day at CNN 33 years ago stop me. But life is not all about work. Hillary Sherbert asked the age-old question regarding that sometimes elusive work-life balance. How, she inquired, do you manage the many aspects of your life, career, daughters, friends, family? Well, Hillary, just like millennials, there are enough books on this topic to fill the McGraw-Page library. Can women have it all? Can men have it all? Can anybody really have it all? Things are definitely changing, and with every generation, the playing field gets leveled more and more. Nowadays, 70% of all moms work outside the home. A recent Pew study found that 4 out of 10 married moms earn more money than their husbands, or are the sole breadwinners. And the number of stay-at-home dads has doubled in the last decade. But still, the perennial conversation about having it all seems as relevant as ever. The answer is, there is no answer, except the one that works for you. With all due respect to Sheryl Sandberg, whether you lean in, lean out, or lean back, that's your choice, and only you can decide what your priorities are. There is a very good chance you'll feel torn every now and then, or perhaps often. For me, it's the guilt I feel when I have to miss one of my daughter's track meets for an interview or a meeting at work. And then the guilt I feel when I turn down a big interview because I'm looking at colleges with my daughter. Having a demanding job and a fulfilling family life is challenging. Perhaps your generation will be more successful than mine has been at demanding we do more to support working families in this country. From affordable childcare to family-friendly work policies, there needs to be a bigger safety net for moms and dads as they try to strike the right balance between parenthood and professional success. You know, I waited to have my kids until I was 34 and 39 when my career was going strong. Proving myself a valuable asset professionally before I had my children gave me the security to know my job would be there when I came back from maternity leave. I'm all for establishing your career so your value at work can afford you more leverage and then more flexibility at home. But if you all want to have children, do not put it off indefinitely. If 40 is the new 30, someone forgot to tell your ovaries. Your fertility decreases significantly as you age. So girls, just keep that in mind. I'm not suggesting you go out and do anything tonight. And you probably never thought you'd be getting family planning advice from your graduation speaker, but knowledge is power. Next, Tolson Music asks, is there one thing you wish you could have told your graduating self that would have been greatly beneficial? What would that be? I think this quote from John Lennon Tolson would have been helpful, and that is, life is what happens when you're making other plans. There are no guarantees and no way to predict the future. I wish I had a crystal ball right now and could tell each of you when your hearts will be broken, when you will experience crushing loss, when people will disappoint you and events will set you back. All I do know is that you will all experience many of those things. And I also know you'll find the strength to get through them. In 1997, I had a fantastic career, a wonderful, intelligent husband, 2 healthy, beautiful daughters who were 1 and 5 at the time. I felt safe, happy, and complete. And then in an instant, everything changed. In April of that year, my husband Jay was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer, and my life, as I had imagined it, was crumbling before my eyes. But every day during his 9-month battle, I was in awe of my husband's extraordinary courage, grace, and humor. And every single day, I felt like there was a vice around my heart. On January 24th, 1998, Jay collapsed in the bathroom and died on the way to the hospital. He was 42 years old. Suddenly, I was a single mom and a member of a club I never in a million years anticipated joining. Ah, that nice cool breeze, maybe that's Jay. Certainly not at that age. I was a widow. It felt so weird to even say that word. In the months after Jay's death, I was inundated with books about grief and how to deal with it, but I derived the most strength from a simple quote by Thomas Jefferson, who said, "The earth belongs to the living." and I had to go on living. I had to, for my daughters. And thankfully, I had a job that enabled me to turn my grief into advocacy. At the Today Show, I had a built-in bully pulpit that allowed me to educate the public about colon cancer and to try to prevent other families from enduring the heartache that ours had. I needed to share what I had learned, that colorectal cancer is the second leading cancer killer of men and women in this country, but with early detection, it has a better than 90% cure rate. My on-air colonoscopy brought whole new meaning to the term up close and personal. But as we heard from President Lindgren, there was a 20% increase in the procedure, and that meant hundreds, perhaps thousands of lives saved. And while those researchers at the University of Michigan call it the Couric effect, I call it the Jay Monahan effect. 4 years after my husband died, I lost my sister Emily to pancreatic cancer. As some of you might know, she was a state senator representing Charlottesville, and many predicted she would one day be the first female governor of Virginia. I can honestly tell you she was the real star of our family. And nearly 12 years after her death, we still miss her so much. Losing my husband and my sister made me want to do everything I possibly could to eradicate this insidious disease. The work I've done creating Stand Up to Cancer and increasing colon cancer awareness has meant far more to me than interviewing presidents, prime ministers, even Bradley Cooper, but he is pretty cute. I'll never forget the moment when my daughter Ellie turned to me in the kitchen when she was about 9 years old and told me how proud she was of all the things I had done to fight cancer. I agree with Maury Schwartz from Tuesdays with Maury, who once told Mitch Albom, "Giving makes me feel like I'm living." Finding a higher purpose is so important, and you've honed the qualities required to do this right here at Randolph-Macon, a generous spirit and an open heart. One of your classmates told me a story that I felt really sums up the kind of people who are here today. When a fire ripped through the Theta Chi house this past fall, thankfully no one was hurt, but everything was lost. Computers, clothes, and all the other things that make up life in a frat house. I don't want to know. But what happened next was, as President Lindgren said, awe-inspiring. You stepped up as a class and as a community to help those students quickly get their lives back to normal. One student described Randolph-Macon this way: "Here you will meet some of the greatest people ever because they make you feel like family and believe in helping others." Please continue that tradition after you leave this campus and continue on your path to being a better man or woman. Carry with you the qualities that have been burnished here during the last 4 years. Be a person of honor, integrity, respect others. Remember that good manners never go out of style. Believe me, I always notice. The losses I've experienced have taught me something else as well. We are all terminal. We all have a finite amount of time on the planet. So you must appreciate the gifts that every day of your life will bring. Your family, your friends, a beautiful sky at sunset, a perfect ear of corn in August, the first snowfall, a baby's tiny hand. Be grateful for the time you have and savor the joy that comes your way. Look for those in-between moments, not big events, but the little ones, when you're laughing with a friend, taking a walk among the cherry blossoms, or helping an elderly neighbor with her groceries. In fact, one of my favorite people, Anna Quinlan, wrote in her book, A Short Guide to a Happy Life, "Life is made up of moments, small pieces of glittering mica in a long stretch of gray cement. It would be wonderful if they would come to us unsummoned, but particularly in lives as busy as the lives most of us lead now, that won't happen. We have to teach ourselves how to make room for them, to love them, and to live, really live. There is so much waiting for you. Put down that iPhone so you won't miss it. Live, really live, and do everything you can to be the next great generation. Congratulations and good luck.